Good afternoon. I'd like to call the May 9th, 2024 Sur City Planning Board meeting to order. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Have a first? And a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Demo. So now I need approval of the, what minutes were they? April 11th, 2024 minutes of the planning board.
I'll make a motion, we approve.
I have a motion to approve. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay,
Minutes.
I missed the second that time. Steve Wheatley, thank you.
The April 11th, 2024 minutes are approved. Do we have anyone for public comment?
Chief today. Where's our chief today?
Policeman.
Usually our police guy shows up.
Somebody's gonna protect us. Maybe he's protecting somebody else today.
Hopefully good.
Mr. Blair just signed it so that he can speak during his, during the presentation on the proximity. So we don't have anyone for public comment. He's just on it for his.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Amy, you ready for site plan approvals?
Yes, ma'am. So the first item tonight is going to be the site plan approval associated with the Turtle Cay Villas. Ms. Maria Williams is here as the representative. So if we have any questions, once I do my presentation, they will be happy to step up and provide answers. The current zoning, or the zoning of this property, is C1 Central Business, and it is located at 211 and 213 North Shore Drive. Christopher Peterson is requesting the site plan approval for Turtle Cay Villas, which is a redevelopment of the former Blizzard's apartments. The original apartments consisted of two buildings. The buildings located at 211 North Shore Drive was 2 stories and housed 6 units. The building located at 213 North Shore Drive consisted of a 1-story single-family residence and a 2-story portion housing approximately 5 units. The original unit housed ground level units, so it was below flood. The proposed redevelopment consists of a single 4-story building with the bottom floor being used for parking and access, so 3-story above pile. 12 units are spread over the remaining 3 stories. The area surrounding the proposed project is zoned C1, as is the site itself, so it is consistent with the zoning around. There is a site plan, there is a vicinity map and zoning map in your packet for your use. Currently, the town utilizes this as a paid parking lot containing 28 spots. Parking spots can be rented by the hour, day, or annually. It is anticipated that the proposed project will generate less traffic than the current parking lot. The site will provide a 5-foot sidewalk along Greensboro Avenue, which will complete the connection from North Topsail to North Shore Drive. Currently, this connection does not exist. The town will be replacing a water line along North Shore Drive. As a part of this project, the town will install a 10-foot multi-use path along North Shore Drive across 213 and 211. The site will receive water and sewer from the town of Surf City. The site obviously already received that sewer and water, so will continue to. The applicant will be utilizing pervious materials in parking areas outside of the roof line to lessen the amount of stormwater runoff, and they will utilize underground storage to provide, to meet our stormwater ordinance. I do want to, of course, note that this development did not have stormwater previously, so this stormwater will be an improvement over the previous site, not the parking lot, but from when the building was there. For parking, the site plan has been designed to allow parking underneath the structure. Each unit will have a designated parking. So although it shows parking 2 deep, under the building, Unit 1 would have the A and the B space. So it won't be people who don't know each other having to ask somebody else to move. 1A and B will be assigned to Unit 1, 2A and B will be assigned to Unit 2, and then along the side, there will be additional parking. The area adjacent to the property has been historically used as a parking area, so when it was Blizzard's apartment, that area was parking. The area along Goldsboro will continue to be used as parking, while the area adjacent to North Shore will not have parking in their right-of-way. However, there will be access to each stall underneath the building, and then again, we'll be putting that 10-foot multi-use path through that right-of-way section there. The site will provide a landscape island adjacent to North Shore Drive and on the corner of North Shore Drive and Goldsboro Avenue. The architectural renderings are provided for your review. Please note that the materials used and percentages provided meet the town ordinances. The building consists of 15,421 square feet of area above pile with a maximum height of 47 feet and 3.5 inches, which is beneath our height restriction of 48 feet. Staff recommends approval as submitted and would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
How many units was the old Blizzard versus the new proposal again?
11.
11.
I'm going to say approximately 11 in the house. So the building was not in use when I got here, so I have never actually been in it. And the way that it was not individual utility accounts. So I'm not 100% sure of how many were in the one, but approximately
What's
11.
the net difference between the two? The
It's-
new proposal versus the old?
Potentially one additional unit.
They were obviously small units in the Blizzard apartments, mainly one bedroom, almost a motel thing.
The building that wasn't attached to the single-story house, that building had 6 units, 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, and they were like long hallway basic units. They were all open. It was unsafe to go in the building by the time I came along. So I cannot tell you what those other rooms look, those other ones, I think some of them may have had 2 bedrooms. However, I did not go in them to find out.
Does the town lease this space
Currently,
now?
so if you own property, you can work with the town, and there's a cost share in there. So the town does currently make revenue off of this. Since the unfortunate fire that burnt them down, it was just a way to use it, in between the time while they were getting all of their plans together. So we were aware when we went into this lease that they would be redeveloping it.
I have several concerns. A, the town, I think, is setting a couple of dangerous precedents by allowing the parking on the street. That could come back and bite us in the butt from other people who do the same thing. And I don't think it's a good thing. I know the town council or somebody said okay, but it's still bad precedent.
So I will say if we take this parking that has been historically parked, then we would need to take all the historical parking on the island that's being utilized. And there is a lot of commercial use that is parked in right-of-ways.
It's not part of the, it's commercial use parked in the right of way, true. But the parking should be based on the type of building and the square footage of the building as a general rule for commercial.
So there are other hotels within the town that currently utilize the right-of-way as parking that we have not taken that parking from.
I understand.
They're not redeveloped either.
They weren't developed from scratch either, which is what this is.
I mean, theoretically, Loggerhead was taken almost all the way down and the building changed when it was redeveloped.
And we allow parking on the street.
We have not stopped it.
Credited to Loggerhead.
We have not stopped it.
Well, that's a different animal.
So in theory, yes, we allow them
Sort of like our sign ordinance.
to park there.
Yeah. The other thing is, as I remember, and I may be wrong, that they need a 3-foot vegetation strip on the 2 sides facing the other property.
So the way that I read that is in the C1, that it's equal to the minimum yard space, and the side yard setback is 0.
I understand that, but when I built my building, I had to have 3 foot of vegetation around it. So I don't understand why this is different.
So 3 foot is not an option in the ordinance. 5 and 10 foot are the numbers that are mentioned. I obviously did not approve your building, so I can't tell you why that decision was made. The way that I read it is that the landscaping has to meet the minimum yard space requirement in C1, and the side yard is 0.
Okay.
If there's extra room, then you can put more in, is what it says, but it says it has to meet the yard setback.
What is the use of the building next door to it on South Shore, on North Shore?
Residential,
Residential?
yes, sir.
Are those designated parking spaces for this project?
That is my understanding, is that the town agreed to designate those spaces. And then as part of that, we are not allowing the spaces to go back in the North Shore right-of-way because we will be putting a multi-use path. So they're only allowed to keep the ones on the side street.
No way to get in the building if you had it on North Shore.
That was their entrance.
Amy, the on-the-street parking, is that what makes them meet their parking requirement number?
So if you read in the C1 section, if you read in the parking requirement, it actually says that C1 is exempt from the parking requirement. However, if you do put in parking, you have to meet the requirements. And my understanding is that is not the way it has been historically. Prior to me, that is not necessarily the way that it was enforced. However, it is in here. It says exception to off-street parking standards, the C1 Central Business District. The provisions of subsection B shall not apply to the Central Business District. However, when such spaces are provided, they shall be designed in accordance with the minimum design requirements of this section. So because they're in C1, they technically do not have to meet it.
Because they're providing it, they have to meet it.
Because they're providing it, the size has to meet our standard size. So they can't make them like 7 foot wide by 14 feet and call that a space. If they're calling it a space, it has to be,
I'm 18.
it has to be the regular
What's the minimum number of spaces they can have for this project?
that they,
Must have.
Must have, yeah.
the minimum number that they must have is 0 because they're exempt. However, it would be 1 per room,
1 per room,
1 per unit.
and there's 12 units.
Yes, ma'am.
They got 13 there.
They had the right to have someone towed if they parked in this side street parking? Who polices that?
That would be a question that I would have to ask. My assumption would be that they would be able to put some kind of sign up there that says reserved. However, if there is not a town of Surf City sign with a QR code on it, you can't legally park there anyway. So there's going to have to be some kind of signage that allows that. We have worked on, in the background, a map of all of the historically parked areas.
Those off-street parking spaces won't be guaranteed to that building.
Who maintains them?
They will maintain it. It will be guaranteed in that they will have to have some kind of permit. They will have to have something because we'll have to tell Pivot, you don't give tickets here for this thing. Because again, if there's not a sign that says this is the way that the ordinance reads, you're not supposed to park in the right of way anywhere unless it is an approved area. So for you to park there legally, you would have to go into the app and pay if you're, from out of town, or your car would have to be registered. But there would have to be a sign there and the yellow bumpers showing that it is a Town of Surf City lot. So the sign won't be there, and they will use a different color bumper so that they do not give the appearance that they're a Town of Surf City parking area. Does that make sense?
I'm a little confused.
So Amy, will you go back over how you explained that Mr. Peterson was suggesting that the parking would be as far as like for Unit 1, Unit 2?
And in.
Chris, can you please turn on my screen so that they can see it?
Chris, would you like to say something?
I don't know, were you asking me to do something?
I'm pulling it up. I was saying my Chris back there to turn on my screen so y'all can see what I see. Okay, so here's kind of the bottom floor or the parking area site plan. Let me get a little bit better centered. So like, see how right here you have this triangle and then you have the triangle behind it? So this is space 1. So this theoretically goes with Unit 1. So Unit 1 is this car and this car. So Unit 1 can bring 2 cars. However, they have to be willing to get along well enough to stay in the same room together and move their cars around together. So Unit 2 can't park under Unit 1, but Unit 1 can park 2 cars deep. So Unit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 would be parked under the building and could potentially have two cars. Units 7 through 12 would be parked over here and would only have 1 unit, or they would have to pay to park public parking somewhere else or something, but they would offer, we do not count these back spaces, these back 6 spaces as spaces in the parking. We only count the front ones and the ones down the side.
So there's at least 1 parking spot for all units.
Yes, ma'am, and 2 for 6 of them. And then, because it's a hotel, they also own the hotel across the street. So some of the amenities as far as like housekeeping and whatnot will be for the complex as a whole, keeping it in the hotel realm for the zoning requirements.
Street parking's kind of set up like on the side of IGA, correct? How that's set up?
Yes, sir.
is, in front of the coffee shop and the salon?
But that's a good example. They're parked in the right of way.
And they have that well marked as far as for their businesses, and it's separate from the town.
Yeah, so we utilize the yellow bumpers that you can kind of see here. So they would use a different color bumper as well, and then there wouldn't be any signs. Let me see if I can.
You say bumper, you're talking about a wheel chock?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So these little guys right here. And then you see how we've got these pay to park signs. So if there is not a pay to park sign, you cannot park there utilizing air parking passes.
Rods know that.
Exactly.
Sure, honest.
Well, they know all that.
They find out the hard way. There's a 3-foot setback on the back of the property next to the, what we're looking at right there, I guess.
Next to the yellow building.
Yeah. Is that gonna be landscaped or just left dirt?
There will need to be some landscaping will need to be added back there. So as part of the site plan approval tonight, we can say it is to include the rear setback. Now, whether or not that's gonna live, probably not, because the other building is right on the line as well. So it's not gonna get much sun.
Whether they pave it?
questions or discussion?
Can you explain one more time, are they getting grandfathered in on these street parking spots? Is that,
The town agreed that since it was historically parked, so Mr. Peterson came in, he bought this property. The intent was to redevelop the existing building. Unfortunately, the fire happened and he wasn't able to. So when we first started talking to Mr. Peterson, part of it was you're redeveloping a building, you're fixing that. We're going to agree to allow this parking to remain. No fault of Mr. Peterson's, the building burnt down, so we continued with, we have agreed to allow you. Now, as part of that, obviously, is if we have an improvement that's gonna go through there, then you will lose that. So they lost any parking on the front because we will be putting that 10-foot wide multi-use path on there.
so that agreement has been made already?
That agreement was made a year and a half ago during the time of purchase. And again, there are multiple other buildings that would not have parking if they took away their right-of-way
IGA
parking.
being one.
I mean, the IGA has the side lot, but the buildings fronting
Yeah,
Roland
for
would not
everybody to
have any
park.
parking.
I think the planning board ought to look at that when we come up for the new zoning review. Just to make sure we're doing the right thing in the future.
So you'll be getting, within the next few days,
Good.
the all-together copy for y'all to make comments in. So if you have any comments, please send them to me so that I can send them to Karen. But they've taken all of our other comments, incorporated them in, and will be giving us the clean copy for final review. And we'll talk about that later on tonight.
Sounds like they check all your boxes. So I'll make a motion, we approve it.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion is carried. Mr. Williams? Would you like to?
Our next item is high tides.
Yeah, I'd like to be recused.
I need a motion to recuse Frankie Williams from the next item
Motion.
on the agenda.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor?
We'll bring him back after this item. So tonight, in your packet, is the site plan approval for NC Highway 50 Amusement Center, also known as High Tides or High Tides and Good Vibes. It is owned by High Tides and Good Vibes LLC. The engineer is Hanover Design Services. I believe they are here tonight, or no? Okay, so Eric is one of the people associated with this project, and he is here tonight if we have any questions for him. The size of the site is approximately 5.1 acres. It is zoned C3 and is located at 13971 NC Highway 50. So the Family Entertainment Center is a redevelopment of an existing manufactured home park. The existing park consists of 12 manufactured homes on the front half of the property, with the remaining portion being undeveloped. The proposed plan consists of a 39,050 approximately square foot building containing bowling lanes, arcade games, axe throwing, a ropes course, and a restaurant with outdoor seating. The subject property is zoned C3, which allows indoor amusement centers and restaurants as permitted uses. The property to the north, south, and east is zoned C3, while the property to the west is zoned rural agriculture. As noted in the vicinity and zoning map in your packet. The NCDOT was asked to provide a trip generation based on the submitted project description. The definition of a multipurpose recreational facility most closely aligns with this use. The proposed trip generation would not require a TIA. Based on the proposed trip generation, a right turn lane would be required for this site. The NCDOT will require a driveway permit for this access point. As a part of the driveway permit process, they will review this trip generation to ensure that the use most closely aligns with the proposed project. And as you're aware, there's already a left turn lane out there. So more than likely, the maximum they would have to do would be a right turn lane because that left turn lane already exists the whole way down. So there is an existing sidewalk along NC 5210. Any damage that is created to that sidewalk during construction will be repaired by the developer. And then there is a direct connection from the front door to the sidewalk along NC 50. So if you're walking down 50 and want to get in there, there is a direct connection. The site will receive sewer and water from the town of Surf City. This site already had that service, so they are able to utilize the existing services. The town ordinances require that the applicant provide either a high-density state stormwater permit or a system that meets the town requirements. The applicant will provide an approved high-density state stormwater permit prior to the start of construction. You can see on the site plan over there that they are showing a pond at the front of the site, and they are currently working with NCDEQ to get that permit finalized. They will also need a sediment and erosion control permit. And they've cleared a little bit in the back, but they cannot do any more clearing than 1 acre until they finalize this permit. The submitted plan proposes 202 parking spaces. This is just below the maximum requirement of the 211 parking spaces. The buffer shown on the plan meets the town ordinances. There are areas that we're going to try to leave existing trees. If they're not able to leave those existing trees to meet the ordinance, then they will have to come back and extend the proposed landscaping on either side through that section that they ended up having to clear. The architectural renderings are provided for your review. Please note that the materials used and percentages provided meet the town ordinances. We recommend approval as submitted, and we're happy to answer any questions if you have them.
What are the side uses to this facility?
Sir?
What's on either side of this facility?
There is a boat storage on one side and self-storage on one side and boat storage on the other.
Say again?
On one side, let me scroll up there.
Old Ace?
So it's the old Ace and the storage is on one side, and then on the other side is the boat storage that has 4 manufactured homes at the front. So M&K Boat Storage is between M&K Boat Storage and the Ace Hardware / furniture store.
Yeah. Beach furniture outfitters.
Yes, sir. So it's between 2 very commercial uses.
And that right turn lane is going to be just like the one in front of Salty Turtle.
I believe it's 100-foot with either a 50 or 100-foot taper. So the DOT will give those dimensions, but it'll be similar to what's going into Charlie Medlin.
What happens to the driveway next to it with the turning lane that goes into the boat storage? Like, does that driveway, would the turning lane be in front of that driveway, or how does that work? I know you're not DOT, I was just curious.
So that it can be in it. Let me look at.
You can have like an entrance in a turning lane, I guess.
You can. It's not always ideal.
Yep.
Um,
Because their driveway is kind of staggered to that side, so I didn't know if it would.
Yeah, so, and DOT may require them to shift the driveway a little bit to allow for that.
When are we gonna 4-lane that road?
5210?
Yeah.
We just spent a bunch of money on a bridge. We are not going to 4-lane that section to dump it into a 2-lane bridge.
That's why I wanted a 4-lane bridge.
We will, it is not in any prioritization to four-lane this section of roadway.
That's why we don't need more building.
I mean, by the time we put all the right turn lanes out there, you're kind of going to have a four-lane.
Right.
Some more lights.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Just don't have any more turn circles or stoplights.
Have any other discussion about this project?
Nope.
Do I have a motion?
You have a motion.
Make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
A first and a second, all in favor?
Can you tell me who are we counting as the first? Ellis and Ward. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
What's Sheila doing?
I'm sure she knows, but I just want to be 100% sure that she knows.
Those.
All in favor, one more time.
Aye.
Any opposed? Project is approved. Would you bring Frankie back in, Eric? Thank you.
Back in the starting squad.
Amy, as I own property across the street from this, do I need to recuse myself?
You own property across from the proximity. Do you stand to gain any financial
I hope so.
from from the proximity? Are you financially gaining anything if this is approved?
I hope the land becomes more valuable. That's financial.
Are you related to anybody that's in the development people's?
If this proximity,
Yes.
no.
If you feel like there is a financial gain to be had by you approving this, then you should recuse yourself. If you do not feel like there's a financial gain, then I think,
Likely tainted.
So you would like to recuse yourself? Okay. So I need a motion to,
Motion to.
all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Do I have to leave? I just can't sit here and be dumb?
We'll go get you when we can have you back.
I'll sit in the audience and
No call signs.
I can get up.
all right. Our next item is the site plan approval of the proximity. The engineer on this project is Mr. Jeremy Blair. Jeremy is here tonight if you have any questions for him. The approximate acreage on this project is 40.71 acres. The project name is the Proximity Apartments. It is zoned multifamily cluster. So the apartment complex consists of a mix of apartments, townhomes, and carriage buildings, providing 4 carriage houses in a total of 2 buildings, so each carriage house is 2 units. 60 townhomes, so that's 6 units in 10 buildings, 336 apartments over 12 buildings. And the number of apartments per building does vary, but there are 12 total buildings. So this creates a total of 400 units. And then the bedroom count for that is 166 one-bedroom units, 210 two-bedroom units, and 24 three-bedroom units. The site also provides 5 garage buildings totaling 36 spaces, a residential trash compactor and recycling station, and a clubhouse with a pool. The subject property is zoned MFC, which allows residential condominiums, townhomes, and multifamily development as a permitted use. The property to the east side of Coretta Drive is also zoned MFC, while the south side of Tortuga Drive is mixed use and rural agriculture, and the adjacent Pender County zoning to the north and east is rural performance. As a part of the approval process, the town will require the connection to Coretta Drive, the correction of Coretta Drive to NC 210. This connection will provide the secondary access that emergency services requires. The extension of Coretta Drive is located within the active NCDOT project, which is R5900. This project is related to the NC 5210 Belt Road intersection improvements. Coretta Drive would create a quadrant road system that would increase the efficiency of the NC 5210 Belt Road intersection while adding additional access to properties located along Charlie Medlin Drive and Tortuga Road, potentially removing trips from the intersection. Town, NCDOT, and development staff will meet to discuss this connection further. If the NCDOT does not move forward with the project, the developer will be responsible for designing and building the road to meet town standards. The developer has provided a letter of acknowledgement, acknowledging his understanding that the development cannot be built without this connection. Traffic from this development will be incorporated into the traffic study associated with the R5900 project. If the R5900 project does not move forward, then they will have to do a standalone TIA that is for their traffic and for the road improvements that they would be required to make. And we can talk a little bit more about that towards the end if you would like to, if you have questions on it. So the site plan as submitted shows a sidewalk along the frontage of Coretta Drive and Tortuga Drive. The extension of Coretta Drive would include an extension of the sidewalk on the west side and the multi-use path on the east side. This is currently being incorporated into the R5900 project. Again, however, if the developer builds the roadway, they will be responsible for the pedestrian improvements as well. The site will receive water and sewer from the town of Surf City. Approval of the site plan will place the project on the sewer capacity wait list. Town ordinances require that the applicant provide either a high-density state stormwater permit or a system that meets the town's requirements. The applicant will provide an approved high-density state stormwater permit prior to the start of construction. This permit utilizes the same design criteria as the town's ordinances. The applicant is also working with NCDEQ to receive a sediment and erosion control permit for this site. This permit is required, will require clearing and grubbing of more than an acre. The applicant will also work with NCDEQ and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to receive all required wetland permits prior to being released for construction. The submitted plan proposes 771 parking spaces, with 36 being in the garage buildings. The number of parking spaces exceeds the minimum requirements by 125 spaces, but does not exceed the maximum allowable parking requirement. The buffer shown on the plan meets the town ordinances. If any of the existing trees are not able to remain, additional landscaping will be provided. The MFC zoning requires the site provide 30% open space. The applicant proposes approximately 51% open space. The architectural design will be complementary to the existing Bishop Creek apartments right across the street, so that's pretty much what they're going to look like. Staff recommends approval as submitted with the condition that the developer cannot receive building permits until the road design is complete and under construction. So that roadway is, again, an important part for creating that additional road space. And also, we would have too many units back there for fire to approve. It would far exceed the allowable number.
And OCOs will be issued until the road connection is complete.
Correct.
Yeah, road's definitely key.
So we actually meet with DOT next week. The plans for that roadway are at 25%, so we will meet with them and discuss it, and they will continue working through the process. The developer will work with them on providing the right-of-way and some different things. And again, if it falls out of the STIP, then they will be responsible for it.
The sewer capacity wait list, what are we looking at for that, you probably think, David?
Mr. David Price is here and would love to answer that question.
We currently have a project under construction. Originally, it was rated for 150,000 gallons a day. We are currently looking at getting that re-rated because it's performing better than we thought it would. It's not going to get us 1 million gallons or nothing, but a little bit more. Currently, we have 35,000 gallons a day on the wait list. This project could take up another 98,000, which would close us out.
Is that during peak season as far as when we're in the middle of summer?
No, we still use the state calculation. It does not take into account peak.
As far as the demand, the new demand goes and we're in peak season, what do you see?
We double July 4th. So this kind of meets in the middle, not to get too deep into the weeds, but the state calculation is 120 gallons per bedroom. The average around the U.S. is about 80 gallons per bedroom. In the peak season on the island, we see about 200 gallons per bedroom.
These are the same owners as the units across the street, is that right?
Somewhat.
Somewhat.
There may be a different partner or two between the two, but some of the key players are the same.
What's the capacity of the buildings across the street as far as rental?
Is anyone here?
How full are they? Is that what
Bishop
you?
Creek?
What was the question? I didn't.
What's the capacity of the buildings across the street? So once we add, if we're looking at adding, we're adding a total of 336 apartments, 60 townhomes, and 4 carriage houses. In addition to what's across the street, what would that be?
The original approval was 144 homes or apartments, and then the second 2 buildings was an additional 48, correct?
50.
50. So once they build their second set of, their last 2 buildings, they'd have approximately 194 apartments in the existing complex, and the new would be 400.
Almost 600?
Yep.
We know what the capacity right now that which Bishop Creek that's already up there leasing? What percentage is?
Do not.
95%?
Do you know what it's gonna look like at the 210 connection, like stoplight or right turn only, or
So
did you already say that?
there's some discussions going on. You have the signal at Walmart out here, at Cataway and Fun Center. To place the signal at Coretta it would be closer than the standard, distance the DOT likes to see. So there may be changes to our intersection out here, and there may be limited to both, where there's limited movements in both intersections. One may be remain full movement, and one may stay limited. The point of that road from the DOT's standpoint is to utilize Charlie Medlin and Coretta to remove certain movements out of the 5210 intersection. By removing those movements, you can increase the amount of time and move more traffic.
Is there any like easement from Coretta to the Walmart?
So the road there's a portion of that is owned by the Walmart itself and is on the Walmart site plan. So there's a part of the roads in the Walmart shopping center are maintained by the HOA or whatever it's called when it's a business, but the association associated with them. But the portion back there beside the Walmart is actually on the Walmart's property and owned by Walmart. So we can't really, because we've looked at that. We had looked at tying in, excuse me. We had looked at tying in to just that existing signal. We don't have the right of way.
I was thinking like the
Would
opposite.
provide the right of way.
I was thinking like remove that signal and have the tie-in and put the signal at Coretta.
So the signal may be moved wholesale to Coretta,
Gotcha.
with limited movements here, which would make this basically a right in, right out, and the opposite side of the street a right in, right out. Or it could be some limited movement. The traffic engineers will determine that, not me.
As of right now, it would be a right in, right out, kind of like the amusement park
So they'll-
or the amusement center that we just passed.
The outcome of what that connection, the Coretta 210 connection looks like will be determined by the North Carolina Department of Transportation and their traffic engineers and studies. It will not be determined by me. So there's two things. This is a by right development, which means they have the right to develop it. So right now, if you agree to it moving forward, the DOT is going to determine what that looks like, no matter who funds it and pays for it. Because it's not my road, I have no control over what that connection looks like. So they will either create a traffic impact analysis that just looks at their development and their developments, or it will be incorporated into this project. Our hope is that it's incorporated into this project and the project moves forward, because the project will be looking at it as a regional improvement, not an apartment level improvement.
Right now, what is it approved?
We need to focus on the site plan. The connection has to be made. What exactly that's gonna look like on 5210, we don't have we don't have the authority to make that
So
decision.
they make the connection regardless of what they do with the property, basically.
For them to build the apartments, the connection has to be made. What's up in the air right now is whether it's gonna be incorporated into a state project or whether they're gonna have to do it themselves. And if the DOT says, we're not gonna do this, and the developer comes back and says, we couldn't make the connection, then we say, no longer valid. You no longer have site plan approval. You're gonna have to come back to the drawing board with something else.
And the MFC, the multifamily cluster, that counts for that right now covers apartments?
Would you like to come to the podium?
David said that you have to start development within 1 year to be able to stay on the sewer list. So when and what is start, if that makes sense?
Yes, what Mr. Zimmer is referring to is the sunset clause within our ordinance, and what that states is once sewer is offered to you, if, give you an example, we're on schedule and they're offered in official manner to connect, they have 1 year to break ground. And if it ever goes dormant for 1 year, they give up the capacity. So whenever that our infrastructure is ready to be served, the people on the list will get an official letter from the town stating you are now being offered sewer, you have 1 year to break ground on the site.
So what does that, what can I ask, is that just mulching trees, tearing them down, putting a bulldozer out there?
Yes, if there's movement, there is, and if it goes dormant for 1 year, that's a different story, then they lose it that way as well.
Okay, so just so we're crystal clear on this, they would take up the whole sewer capacity for the next 3 to 5 years.
No, the wait list will, half the capacity is already used up by the,
Yes, but there would be 0 left on the wait list.
we don't know that exactly yet. As we originally permitted it, yes.
Okay.
But I
I think the project is great, but there's a lot of questions on the road, right? So what we're doing is we're kind of saying for the next 2 years, every other development is on hold unless they start to break ground.
yes, sir, we were first come, first serve on this.
So it's just making sure, there's other roads that are gonna come out that are also gonna work with this. I think there's 2 projects that work well together that you'll start to see. And in my opinion, it's almost like a shared network would work a little better for the city than giving one person all of it for 2 years and everybody else just waits. So you'll see some more projects. Thank you.
Have any other discussion?
So just to be clear, what Mr. Zimmer was saying is if we approve today and they break ground, they tire up the water and sewer for however long till their development goes. And then if they decide to just show even a little bit of movement on the project, whether they're building or not, if they're showing even a little bit of movement, they still hold the rights on the water and sewer list to stop others, correct? I just want to make sure we're on the same
A
page.
couple of things, we don't approve anything at this level, we're only a recommendation.
No, I mean, as far as our recommendation goes.
And then council makes the
I
approval
understand that, but
decision.
as far as recommendation goes.
So this is a fully designed project ready to go. They're just, waiting on the DOT portion. For a project who is earlier in the phases, it's still gonna take a year or more for them to become entitled, get all the entitlements, finish all of the permitting. So, these guys are further ahead. We're working with the department, with the Department of Transportation to create a regional need. if this project doesn't come in, then that road probably won't come in the near future, because of the right-of-way costs that are associated with buying the land that are now being looked at differently because they have to build the road anyway. So this project significantly decreases the cost of that and could potentially move it up in the STIP. So there's a lot of moving parts with the roadway portion.
Mr. Blow, if I could ask your question, yes. It first comes first served, and what he's speaking of with the sunset clause, that is codified in ordinance. That's not up to me or my direction. That is law that's been on the books for 10 years. So yeah, if anybody comes in and eats up some sewer capacity, if they move a little bit, unless we want to change the law, I can't take that back.
Okay.
It's that way with every
That way,
applicant.
for the
It's not
sunset
just-
clause came into
not just
effect
these people.
2010, I believe. So it's been that way for 14 years.
I just want to be clear, though, I like the project. Good. It's just scary if you're unknown, because there's other things too.
Need the road.
Yeah, the road would be nice. I see what you're saying though. So the roads are gonna progress faster because they're gonna give up the land, obviously, so the DOT will hopefully pay for it. So it makes sense.
Yes, it can move up. The way that the funding is, if, let's say, that it's funded for right-of-way, and then they don't have to spend those funds on right-of-way. They can spend them on the next phase of construction, which would be the construction phase. So there are things that will help. And any project that we give approval to, as we all lived through things in the past, may or may not come to fruition. Anything, I mean, I've got quite a few site plans that have expired, that have been done since I've been in this chair, not including the ones that I brought back to y'all that have expired. And some of the ones that were approved anywhere in 13 on that I've brought back to you have already expired again. So it's always a moving target, unfortunately, for planning.
Any other discussion on the proximity? Do I have a motion? Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve it with your conditions.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
Opposed?
Proximity is approved. Motion is carried.
Mr. Price. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Ready?
So the next item on our list is a rezoning. I do want to talk a little bit about rezonings up front. Just a few reminders. We have not done a straight rezoning since I started in this job almost 5 years ago. We have done conditional district rezonings, we have done special use permits, and we have recommended zonings for annexations, but we have not done a straight rezoning. So I want to make sure that everybody remembers that when we are doing a straight rezoning, we cannot ask site-specific questions. We are not looking at what this person intends to do with that project. We are looking at everything that can be done in that zoning district as a whole. So a straight rezoning is for all uses associated with that. It is a blank slate. We can't talk about proposed road connections, proposed access points, proposed tie-ins to adjacent property. It is just a blanket, does this zoning work with the comprehensive land use plan and fit with the surrounding property? And the reason I bring that up is because our last few have been conditional districts, and we have gotten very in the weeds of what that site plan looked like and whether or not we should approve it. And that has been a very big portion of our rezoning decision, and that cannot be a part of our rezoning decision tonight. So we have 3 rezoning requests tonight. The first one is going to be the longest one, just because it's going to have some of that background information in it, and we're going to talk through the rezoning process a little bit. And it may seem repetitive by the time we get to the third one, because we're just kind of drilling that in. This is formerly known as the Rochelle property. So the first one in your packet,
I'll recuse myself from this.
Frankie would like to recuse himself. Y'all are killing me.
So, Mr. Williams has asked to recuse himself from this rezoning request. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're gonna try this again. This is the CADJ Finance LLC request for rezoning of approximately 29.08 acres. This is known previously as the Rochelle property. Most people will recognize that more than anything else. It connects to the roundabout on Charlie Medlin and Tortuga. It runs to J.H. Batts Road and then crosses J.H. Batts Road and runs to the properties that border Little Kinston. It does not have a connection on Little Kinston Drive. So that's the property. You're going to see it here in a minute, but just a quick, I think most people know where this property is. So Charles Riggs is here. He is here on behalf of CADJ Finance, who is also represented by Jesse Zimmer. If you have any questions, both of them will come up. I have a feeling that Mr. Riggs is going to want to talk a little bit tonight. So he'll be up here in a few minutes. So they're requesting approval of a general use zoning map amendment to rezone 2 tracts of land totaling 29.08 acres from rural agricultural to mixed use district. As we discussed, the subject properties are located along J.H. Batts Road and may be further identified by the Pender County GIS numbers provided in your packet. Your location map is also in your packet, and it's highlighted in yellow, the 2 tracts that we're talking about. The applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 29.08 acres of land from rural agriculture to mixed use district. Since this is a general rezoning request, a site plan is not included in the application. If approved, the property could be developed to include any of the uses allowed by right or by special use permit in the mixed use zoning district. Of course, if they wanted to do something by special use permit, they would have to come back to the board for that special use permit. Anything that's in the permitted column, they would just be able to do. The applicant would then bring the site plan to the town for review and approval. The site plan would have to adhere to all requirements of the mixed-use zoning district and all local, state, and federal regulations. Depending on the development chosen, the additional approval may require up to planning board recommendation and council approval. The rural agricultural district is established as a district in which the principal use of land is for low-density, single-family residential purposes. The regulations of this district encourage rural farming activities and the preservation of open space. The district is designed to promote urban, low-density residential development, not requiring urban services, while maintaining prime farmland and rural lifestyle. The mixed-use general commercial district is to provide and protect areas suitable for a mixture of uses, providing retail goods, services, lodging, tourist services, entertainment, and single-family dwellings. Its regulations are designed to encourage the formation of continuity among commercial uses located along the town's major roads and to ensure adequate and properly designed methods of ingress and egress to commercial properties while providing for safe and adequate traffic flow along the major roads. In your packet is the use of all, or is a list of all uses that are by right uses or permitted uses, and then there is a list, a very short list of things that are allowed by special use permit. I'm not going to read all of them to you. The subject property has direct access to J.H. Batts Road and the roundabout at Charlie Medlin Drive and Tortuga Drive. General rezonings do not provide site-specific data, therefore a trip generation summary is not provided. If developed, the applicant will provide a trip generation summary to determine the adequacy of existing facilities. The site will receive water and sewer from the town of Surf City. Approval of this rezoning request will not place the applicant on the sewer wait list. A site-specific plan will need to be submitted and approved by town council or staff, depending on the applicable ordinance, before being placed on the wait list. So this rezoning would be step one, and then step two would be the site plan, which would get them on the wait list for sewer capacity. The Pender County GIS environmental layer shows the potential of wetland areas on the site. The applicant will be responsible for having the site reviewed for wetlands prior to the submittal of a site-specific plan and meeting any required state and federal laws associated with those wetlands. The east side of both tracts primarily abuts C3 zoning with one small MU parcel and one small PUD zoned property. The portion between Charlie Medlin Drive and J.H. Batts Road abuts R5 on the west and mixed use and MFC on the north. The property south of J.H. Batts Road abuts R5M to the west and MHS to the south. The zoning map is shown in here for a visual, and then there is a nifty little table underneath that showing your kind of land use that's there now and what that's currently zoned. The Town of Surf City 2022 Land Use Plan provides Chapter 5, Land Use and Growth Management, as well as Map 5-3, Future Land Use Map. The Land Use Plan is used to guide rezoning requests and in the assignment of zoning during the annexation process. If the proposed rezoning request is approved, the Future Land Use Map will automatically be updated with the new zoning. So if we feel the new zoning falls in a different land use category than what it currently is, then that map would be updated as a part of this rezoning. The future land use map uses names that are not the same as the zoning, so we got to kind of see where it falls, and then it would be updated. If the request is denied, I believe obviously the future land use map will remain unchanged. And there is a copy of the map in your packet. So the table below provides the existing and proposed future land use map categories. So the existing is neighborhood mixed use with a desired use of commercial, retail, and office, single-family duplex, and limited townhome development. Undesired uses are establishments requiring large surface parking in excess of 20,000 square feet, industrial and low-density residential uses. For the regional mixed use, which I feel the mixed use category falls more into, which would be most commercial, retail, office, and institutional, employment centers, including compatible manufacturing and industrial, multifamily residential, and high-density single-family residential uses when part of a mixed-use development and upper-story residential. My reasoning for kicking that into the regional mixed use is that our mixed use does allow for apartments and shopping centers up to 75,000 square feet in that one. Neighborhood mixed use allows for a transition between more intense commercial, office, and residential development to lower density residential neighborhoods, as well as opportunities for strategic low intensity nodes of commercial activity. The neighborhood mixed use category is primarily dedicated to non-residential uses that provide services, entertainment, and amenities to residents within a 3-mile radius. This future land use category should be composed of a mixture of integrated commercial, office, institutional, and residential uses. The future land use classification is not intended to be solely reserved for mixed-use developments. Single-use developments that contribute toward an integrated land use pattern of appropriate commercial, office, civic, and medium-density residential uses are encouraged. Appropriate uses include neighborhood-scale restaurants, retail, and office establishments, religious and educational institutions, and higher-density single-family duplex and limited townhome developments. Large-scale or intense commercial establishments, multifamily developments, and industrial operations are not appropriate. Building footprints are generally limited to 15,000 square feet in size or smaller. The regional mixed use, which is where I feel our mixed use falls into, that category will allow for the strategic allocation of future development and population growth while limiting land use conflicts within existing neighborhoods. Growth is focused in locations that are served by water, sewer infrastructure and are located along existing primary roadway corridors. This future land use category provides access to retail, office, and multifamily residential uses. These land uses are primarily accessed by automobiles, but facilities should be included to increase the viability of access via walking or cycling to minimize traffic congestion and increase accessibility to surrounding neighborhoods. The preferred land use mix is primarily commercial retail and office with multifamily residential uses. Large employment centers and retail spaces are encouraged. Residential uses should account for less than 50% of a development proposal and should complement a more substantial mix of commercial and office uses. Development within this category should provide ample landscaping and street trees to present an inviting environment to travelers passing through the town. Internal circulation patterns should create street-like spaces lined with on-street angled or paralleled parking and parking areas. Internal pedestrian connections should also be provided whereby structures within a development are connected with each other. Sidewalks should connect all buildings within the site and to adjoining sites. Sidewalks should have street trees and pedestrian lighting. Surface parking lots should be heavily shaded, landscaped, and located in the rear of new development where practicable. Shared parking should be encouraged where multiple uses are located within walking distances. Stormwater infrastructure should be located behind buildings or incorporated into the design of the development as an amenity. The requested mixed-use zoning allows for more intense development than recommended in the neighborhood mixed-use category. The mixed-use zoning would allow for apartments and shopping centers up to 75,000 square feet. These uses are more aligned with the regional mixed-use category. The policy, I've included policy that I feel may support it, which is the town supports additional compatible commercial development. In particular, small-scale restaurants, cafes, food markets, and retail establishments are encouraged, which are all found in our mixed use. Policies that do not support it are maintaining the small town family-friendly atmosphere at Surf City by encouraging low-density residential development, compatible business establishments, preserved natural areas, and park and recreation facilities. Land use plan consistency. The town generally requires that any official land use and development-related action remain consistent with policies adopted in this plan and any other applicable plan. Any actions that are inconsistent with such plans shall require a statement from the planning board and town council approving such decisions. And then commercial development. The town supports additional compatible commercial development. Can go either way in this case, since it is the amount allowed in mixed use is above and would not be considered small scale. Commercial scale. The town discourages large retail commercial projects when not located along the US 17 corridor. The town desires that new development projects be designed to fit within the commercial district and to be compatible with the size and appearance of the structures already in place. Potential commercial developers are encouraged to discuss restrictions and conceptual matters in advance with the town. The town ordinance, Appendix A, Section 12.3.3 of the town's ordinance provides the requirements for approving rezoning applications. A statement of reasonableness and plan consistency shall be submitted. The statement shall consider the following ordinance, consider the ordinance below. When adopting or rejecting any petition for a zoning map amendment, a statement analyzing the reasonableness of the proposed rezoning shall be approved by the town council. The statement of reasonableness may consider, among other factors, the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area proposed to be rezoned, the benefits and detriments to the landowners, the neighbors, and the surrounding community, the relationship between the current, actual, and permissible development on the tract and adjoining areas and the development that would be permissible under the proposed amendment, why the action taken is in the public interest, and any changed conditions warranting the amendment. Consistency with town plans and policies. Staff is submitting the proposed general use rezoning application for the planning board's consideration. This proposal is consistent with one policy and inconsistent with one objective and 3 policies from the Town of Surf City 2022 Land Use Plan. This plan supports commercial growth. However, more intense development as allowed in the mixed-use zoning is supported along the US 17 corridor and not along our smaller side streets. As noted within the above policies and objectives, the wide range of uses allowed within the mixed-use zoning does not support the small town, small-scale development that is supported outside of the US 17 corridor. The plan does support a mix of use as a transition between the more intense C3 zoning and residential zoning. However, the broad range of uses within the mixed-use zoning would not limit larger-scale retail and more dense residential, such as apartments. The rezoning request would allow intense, larger-scale commercial or denser residential to be placed in this transitional area. The planning board will need to vote to recommend approval or denial. I've provided two statements. If the planning board wishes to approve, then they will read the first statement and add their reasonings. If they vote to deny, they can utilize this statement and use objective 5.1, policy 5.1B, 5.1I, and 5.1J. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can see the map that was provided on the screen over there. So we are basically looking at that blank slate of land, everything that could be used as mixed use, and determining whether that is a good decision to allow any of those uses on that property.
Would you summarize these objective 5.1, policy 5.1B, and all that, this list of things at the end of the summary?
So basically, those are the policies that are listed out. The way that I interpret those is that we are looking more for this small town feel in that area, and that the allowance of the apartments and the larger commercial would go against that. And it would also be against an R5 area that would, in that transition area.
Policy 5.1B and 5.1I and J.
So 1B is the land use plan consistency, whether or not it is consistent with the land use plan. J or I is that the town does support additional compatible commercial development, so small scale restaurants, cafes, food markets, and retail establishments. And then J talks about commercial scale and the bigger commercial being allowed on the US 17 corridor and not within the non-major thoroughfares.
This is for tracks on both sides of the road, right? Like the
Yes.
whole thing?
Mm-hmm.
And how did that little speck up front get mixed use? What is that? Is that before your time, I guess, or
That was before my time.
a house right there, or like, what is that?
It was a unique piece of property. It had it has a manufactured double wide on it. At one time, it had a couple extra power sources and campers on it, and potentially a mobile home that got burned up at some point before I came. I'm not sure why. When it came in, it is my understanding when it came into town, they requested the mixed-use zoning, and we agreed to it.
Is what they're asking for a regional mixed use or neighborhood mixed use?
So that is what the land use plan is. They're asking for regular mixed use based on our ordinance. So our zoning districts are not the same as the future land use classifications, which makes it muddy.
Very.
Very complicated.
We spent all that time doing this for 2022 to get to a
Yes.
certain point.
So that's where you're having to take the mixed use that we have in our ordinance.
Which we're changing.
We are changing that, but that's not to be thought about yet tonight. So we have to take the mixed use that we currently have in our ordinance with all of its uses and look at that and then put it in one of those two categories.
Just a matter of procedure. If we approve this, could it be rezoned after the new ordinance is in place by the town? Or does it have to be strictly what was?
So in the zoning ordinance rewrite, the town is not looking to really change the zoning. We are changing the names of some things, so the names will be different, but the basic underlying characteristics would not change. Like the C1 would become Island Town Center. And then the outliers may become something else because they're really not in the Island Town Center, but it would still have many of the same characteristics of the Island Town Center. So if the town would not, I do not feel, would actively try to rezone this piece of property, as a part of the zoning ordinance change. If it was approved and the applicant came up with something that he liked better, you know, he could always come back and request a rezoning in the future himself, but we are not looking to truly change the zoning of any parcels.
Looking to do something like neighborhood mixed use,
So that is the land use category, but we're not looking,
to have a zoning.
we're not looking to have a zone called neighborhood mixed use or one called,
Regional,
regional. Yes, sir.
why not?
When we decided to do this, we decided to update the ordinance, not do a wholesale UDO. So in staying with the update of the ordinance, we are not looking to completely rename and change things. And the land use is more of a category, and there may be multiple zonings that fall under them. Like R5, R10, R15 may all fall under the same category because they're residential, yet they have differences in lot sizes. The same thing with regional mixed use. Right now would be more of our C3, but it may include some of the office and institutional, or, you know, some of the different zonings.
What does RA translate to in the future land use?
Let me see. It is going to be more of the mainland residential, potentially the coastal residential. To be honest, we don't really, the rural agriculture has a much lower tax designation, and these are older pieces of property that have been wooded. There was no plan with them. So it keeps your taxes down until you're ready and you know what you're doing. You also don't want to go through the hassle of rezoning it to office and institutional just to find out 5 years later that that really wasn't the best thing. So leaving it as that rural agriculture is a good way to leave it in a low category and just kind of hold on to it until you're ready, or until you sell it to someone else and let them go forward with their plan or dream.
It wouldn't seem that RA was appropriate for that area, though. I wouldn't think. I mean, agricultural in the middle of town like that. I mean,
Not
was.
for use, but it would be, like Amy said, a placeholder
yeah.
It's a good placeholder, and it's,
sort of thing.
if you,
What I'm saying is, at some point, it will be adjusted, whether it's now or later.
Yeah,
I mean,
this
it's
will not,
appropriate.
rural agriculture, I think, has to have like a 20,000 square foot lot. Nobody sells a 20,000 square foot lot in Surf City unless it's, 15,000 square foot of wetland, right? So it's gonna redevelop. The zoning will change in the future, whether it's one of the requests tonight or if it's something else. It would not stay rural agriculture.
Currently not really appropriate.
No.
As of right now, how many like condo units would they be able to put in? Not saying that they're not going into the weeds of what they're gonna use it for, but in big picture, how many units would they be able to fit into that area?
So, I mean, theoretically, the one that we looked at earlier tonight was 40 acres and had 400 units. So if this
100
one is
acre
right
or
at
100
30,
per 10?
maybe 300 units. But that would just be totally throwing a number out there, not knowing what the wetlands are or anything.
What would the difference between being request for a rezone and requesting for a special use permit in
So
this
special use
situation?
special use permit is just for certain uses. I think what you're asking is more of a conditional district where you came forward with a site plan. The conditional district would require the site plan, the environmental to be completed on it, a public hearing, or a public meeting, which is very not time consuming, but getting the environmental done on this and moving forward with those documents can take quite a bit of time, and it also can be expensive to do all of those upfront things. So it may be easier to ask for the mixed use now And if it's granted, then that's great. But then if it's not, you can always come back with that conditional district once all of that stuff is in place. But the conditional district it requires a site plan. It requires kind of where are your connections to the roadway going to be, and those are all things that you don't look at in this straight rezoning.
It's more upfront of people are more aware of what's going to be put in there.
Conditional district is going to have a much higher upfront cost because you're already having to have some of your site plan design. You're already having to pay engineers and things to start the process. You have to be a little ways in the process before you can submit that conditional district. Where with a straight rezoning, it's a survey, which still costs money. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's a survey. And, you know, if you want to hire a professional to come in and do it, or if you want to do it yourself, or if you want to tag team it, however, it's not as much upfront cost on the individual. The conditional district gives the council, the planning board, and the council more assurance of what's going on. Because if it was a conditional district and he came in and this is my site plan, he or she would have to build that site plan. And if they didn't, they would have to come back and have it rezoned either back to a general rezoning or to a conditional district. So the conditional district really can limit how you can move forward.
Basically more transparency, but at the cost of the builder or the owner.
It locks you into what you're moving forward with. So if it's approved and that's really what you want to do, then you're a little bit further ahead of the game when that rezoning, you're going ahead and moving into like more of a full design set of plans, not a bubble type plan. But if you're not locked into that plan, then you probably don't want to do a conditional district because that's what you got to do.
We're not making a recommendation on what we think it should be. It's just a yes or no for what they're asking.
Yes. Are you going to recommend to council that they approve the mixed-use zoning, or are you going to recommend to council that they deny the mixed-use zoning? And then at the council meeting, there'll be a public hearing for any public members to come in and say how they feel.
So, looking at the agenda and seeing that this property is on here twice, is the goal to get one approval, two approvals?
So I'm going to answer that, and then if they want to answer it differently, they most certainly can. So my answer would be that there is a preferred out of the two, and that if they get the preferred one, then they would move forward with that one, that the other one is a secondary, kind of a fallback zoning that they're willing to consider moving forward with. Does that, Charles, is that?
I'll be glad to speak.
Yeah, if you want to.
Please do.
Good evening, everybody. Charles Riggs, 502 New Bridge Street, Jacksonville. I want to shed a different light on this proposal, if I may. You're familiar with the track. You're familiar with the acreage that's there. You know that on the east side along 5210, all that is C3. So that's high-density commercial. In fact, y'all just recommended a bowling alley right beside this piece of property. Okay, the building is actually right beside the property line if I was looked at it correctly. So you're looking at high-density commercial beside us. To our north, we have the roundabout. We have MU, an existing MU site, which is a proposed restaurant retail. To the west, we have an existing townhome community, R5. The density of that community is 7.5 units per acre. That's pretty dense for residential. On the other side of the road, again, we have high-density commercial, C3, right beside us. On the west side, we have an existing mobile home park. You're familiar with that. That's right at 5 units per acre, which is fairly dense. Standard planning, they'll tell you textbook 1 planning, you have commercial you have light commercial, you have high-density residential, then you have medium residential, then you have low-density residential. You know, it sort of, it loosens up as you go. This situation is why we're asking for MU. MU has a variety of uses for commercial. It also allows for a variety of residential uses. I won't go through the whole list because you know there's quite a few there. So we have a spot between high-density commercial and high-density residential. MU is the best fit for that, okay? Let's talk about the land use plan. The land use plan plainly shows this as neighborhood mixed use, I believe. Let me look at that again, make sure I've got that right. It doesn't mention regional at all. No disrespect, but
Shows it as neighborhood mixed use. I just feel mixed use with the extent of densities meets the regional, not the
right.
neighborhood. That's where we disagree.
But it doesn't say that. The book plainly says the land use plan says neighborhood mixed use. So with that being said, this fits MU the best, okay? I mean, you know, we went with a straight rezone. What's out there? You got mobile home park, you got high-density townhomes, you got a roundabout, you got commercial on one side with the bowling alley right beside you. So we're requesting the MU, and I think that fits the best. It most closely matches the adjoining properties. There's no demonstration that the uses that are allowed within the MU would be not compatible. They are compatible with any uses that you would put there. And it wouldn't materially or adversely affect the adjoining properties. I mean, if you rezone this to MU, all the uses allowed with MU are going to match the existing, the proposed commercial C3 on one side of us all the way down, and we've already got a mobile home park and the townhome complex. So to me, I see no other zone that matches. Be glad to answer any questions you might have. I know we're not addressing any of the roadway connections or wetlands or things of that nature because this is a straight rezone. You're supposed to look and see what's out there and make it match what's out there.
So to your point, you have on the table a proposed mixed use and an R5.
Okay, let's talk about that. We submitted the MU several months ago. And we sort of worked our way through technical review. And we were hoping to get on last month's schedule for you. But we didn't make that. I will say, I've been up here at this podium, I think since 1988, and I have never had this situation come up before. You know, exactly what you said. So, we're looking for an MU. I don't want to address necessarily the next proposal because we were supposed to have the MU last month but didn't get there. So we got put on the same agenda. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what
Okay.
you're saying, but I'm not sure that it's not fair to the planning board to discuss those proposals.
Well,
So that
the
we
next
are-
proposal is actually not the same client. The next proposal is not the same client. There's a sales contract, it's been sold, proposed sold, but they wanted it to be R5. My client today wants MU. At this meeting, we want MU. In my opinion, I believe MU is a better fit than the R5, since you brought that up.
I'm just trying to make sure we understand what we're doing.
I understand.
Voting on.
This is very unique. Like I said, I've never had this before.
Now, Mr. Ward's trying to leave on me.
Any questions for you besides that?
Is that enough if he leaves?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ward. You owe me. I'm sorry, Mr.
Did he
Ward.
recuse himself?
He's leaving.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
Sorry.
You're working with both these clients, so number A's might be mad at you about number B.
So I do think we have to look at them separate. So we have to look at this like, do you feel like the mixed use? We have to recommend on either one, and then they will move forward to council, because there's basically, the way that I understand it is there's basically a sale that's contingent on a rezoning request, and there's someone, we can't look at them.
So
We'll
that
have to
makes
put the
sense
merit
that
on
there's
each
different
one.
applicants, but you don't realize that when you look at the paper, because
That's
both
right.
names are on there.
That's right.
Well, one says deck to C and one says CADJ Finance, but the address and the PIN numbers are all the same, so it is confusing.
There are some members that have same ownership in these car properties. Look at it this way. I mean, I hate to talk about the R5. Well, Amy had mentioned that. This area, mixed use, residential use, commercial use, MU is the best fit because it's a nice blend between the townhomes and the commercial, okay? If you went with the straight R5, then you're putting your townhomes right up against the bowling alley. Do you normally see townhomes or residential use like that right behind the bowling alley? You normally don't. There had been mention about the density on this project, and we don't really need to discuss that in too much detail, but I think she had mentioned 400. I think that's a little unfair
300.
on this. 300?
300.
I think that's a little unfair on this one, because if you compare it with the proximity project, that was MFC. And that allows apartments. The MU doesn't allow the apartments.
The MU does allow the
Oh, do they?
apartments.
Great, okay.
That's-
They
that's my
also allow
concern.
condominiums. So we were looking more like the condominiums. So the density wouldn't be as great.
So I guess my hesitation is that, as of right now, it's rural agriculture. And we have to make a recommendation, and on paper, on the map, yeah, it does make sense that would fall in place, and MU does make sense. But does it make sense to add 300 more possible units into an overwhelmed infrastructure that we have right now, including schools, including other things? That's something that at least I'm considering as far as what the recommendation goes is, does that make sense? It makes sense on paper, yes, it fits in between the townhomes and the bowling alley. But as a board, we still have to look at the long picture of it, and 300 units, possible 300 units, that's an extreme amount of strain in a community that's already overbuilt school-wise,
Let
which
me
is my
address that.
concern.
Let me address that if I may.
Please.
Now, the apartments that are allowed, is that special use permit
Which one? The ones, the proximity?
in the MU?
Nope, it's a
Okay.
by right use.
Okay, so let me say that with a straight rezone, any of the items that you mentioned would then be placed on the developer. What I'm saying is, we're requesting MU. We have to take the chance that when we come back with site plan, that we have the right roads, we have the water, we have the sewer. You follow me? So the burden then falls on us to live up to your expectations.
But you would have the right to build at that point if you have MU versus if you got a.
Only if we satisfy the expectations of water and sewer and streets.
That's apparently been lately pretty easily satisfied. So my concern more, it would be easier, in my opinion, is coming back with a special use permit so that there's transparency to the public of what's going to be in there before it's approved. Please.
Yeah, just make sure you come up. It's your item.
So I understand your concern of the density, and the density of the Wellman's duplexes behind us, I think are 7.5. We actually did this through TRC, and our density is like 6.5 of everything that we were gonna do, doing it as a special use. But the difference is
Conditional district.
yes.
We're mixing up terms. Conditional district is
Conditional
what?
districts. But the interesting part about this is that top part is 9 acres. Is way better off for something like a restaurant, for like an office, for anything where you can,
There's no guarantee.
there's no guarantee. But in other words, what there is a guarantee is I could divide that up in 4 different lots, 20,000 acres, and people could have cows right there in the middle of town. That's one thing that's guaranteed. So the difference between that and if you go and the next agenda is to do it for an R5, that can no longer be commercial So now you're just talking about houses. So the different density that could possibly for an MU compared to an R5 is a 5 compared to a 6.25. So we are barely above.
What's the net value at that point? Because we haven't approved R5 either, so.
No, but yeah, no, correct.
So, I mean, we're talking as if we would approve the R5 versus the MU. And that's, and neither one of them is a guarantee.
Yep. Well, then we can, then you can just have a large lots and people can have cattle there.
Yeah, the R5, you're looking at probably 8 units an acre.
8 units an acre, so
5,000 square
20,
foot.
so 240, 30 acres.
There's just not, I just wanted, the reason we're doing a straight MU is because that top is a very interesting part. It works with these guys for one of the great projects they're working with, right in front of us. There's just a lot more, conceptual stuff that you can do on the top. Because if we go to R5, it's just all residential, and it's almost as dense. So I don't want the word density to scare you, because we're not doing the 16, 18 density that some of the stuff we just got approved. This is a lot smaller, but it gives us an opportunity to have a little bit more commercial that I think Surf City needs in that area.
And you're adjoining commercial. I mean, you don't necessarily put residential right against your, a commercial property.
And what does R5 translate to in the future land use? Would that be coastal residential? That's what it would translate to?
That's what it is next
So then
door.
why doesn't the future land use map have that as coastal residential? Is it because it abuts all the C3?
So my issue with a
Talking about this
straight
future
mixed
land
use, with a,
This is
Yeah,
what
so
we're
my
stipulating in
issue with the
future, it
straight-
has it as mixed use.
my issue with the straight mixed use is that it allows apartments. And the neighborhood mixed use says,
So you want like conditional mixed use?
it says large-scale or intense commercial establishments, multifamily development, and industrial operations are not appropriate. So it clearly lists a use. Am I saying that that's his client's plan? In no way am I saying that. I am saying that this says it's an inappropriate use and that commercial larger than 15,000, and it allows commercial buildings up to 75,000, and it allows. Do I agree with him that mixed use is a good transition and agree with most of the things that he's saying? Yes. However, the whole gamut of mixed use is not, according to our land use plan, and appropriate. And that's where our difference is coming in, is that to me, when it says this is not an appropriate use, and I have it listed in my table of uses, then a wholesale straight rezoning to mixed use without a conditional district that limits those uses at a minimum and says this is gonna be a commercial tract and we're not gonna have more than this many square, or whatever, is where my concern comes in. It's not
Rather
with,
see conditional mixed use, is what you're
it's
saying.
not with the, it's because we're looking at it as a wholesale straight reuse. And it's not that I think that he's gonna come in with that, because I know what he wants to do in the background. I also know that things change, economies crash, things happen, and I have to look at this as the big picture. And the big picture says this is not an appropriate use with buildings larger than 15,000 and for the multifamily development, and those are two uses that are in there.
The apartments fall under the multifamily classification, is that true? Yeah, okay.
It's all in multifamily.
I mean, I
So
had that
I
on
don't-
here. I didn't have the word apartment, I had multifamily classification.
I
Yeah.
don't necessarily disagree with him and not getting to the moving to the R5 request, that straight residential is the right answer either. However, our mixed use is such a broad category. And it may be that we need to look at, when we're doing our rewrite in the next, when we're wrapping this up, limiting some of the uses in the mixed use so that it's not such a broad category. And that would make the neighborhood, make it jive with the neighborhood mixed use in the plan much better. But you gotta update the plan before you update the ordinance.
Well,
The
right now,
steps.
you have to use the plan that's on record. So the plan that's on record is,
Is the 2022 that says.
right. And of course, our lot coverage in MU is 40 to 50% lot coverage. So half of it's gonna be open space.
Because one of the other things is, we can't just say, according to how this is done, we cannot say we're not gonna do apartments. Because if we could just say we're not gonna do apartments, this would be easy. We can't say that. Like, we would like to, But according to how it's done,
Well, it's not listed as apartments, it's listed as multifamily.
I can't have that as a conditional rezoning.
And that's where my hesitation comes from, because we could be driving down the road in 4 years from now looking at 300 new apartments.
But what we're saying is I
And I'm
can't-
not saying that that's what you would
I
do.
have to do a site plan that maybe will never ever happen, and we gotta come back again and try to do a site plan for the front, because we want it to be commercial. But you can't do that. So I would like to say to you guys that I would like not to have apartments in that use, but I can't do that with how the town regulates a rezoning.
I understand.
We're not trying to do apartments.
Well, let me say that this would not be the first planning board meeting I've been to where the planning board had made a recommendation that included a condition, even though we were requesting a straight rezone.
Possible?
Is that possible? Because what if somebody came and gave you a big trillions of
can't-
dollars
if
and then
it's-
said, oh, it's approved this way, I can do apartments now?
If it's not, if it's not a conditional district, I can't limit the uses.
But what I'm saying though, I've had
However,
jurisdiction to do that.
yes, I've seen a lot of things happen too, Charles.
So we cannot place conditions on a mixed
On a
use.
straight rezoning.
But council can, so you guys can recommend it.
Council can't, on a straight rezoning legally, just because it's been done doesn't make it correct. We can't place conditions on a straight rezoning.
That would make it a conditional rezoning,
Yes.
and that site plan specific.
We are requesting MU,
You think?
because we feel like that is an appropriate zone. And the burden of meeting the infrastructure and your concerns for the future would be our responsibility to meet that during site plan review. So you get to see it again, several times.
But at that point, you'd have the right to build, so we kind of lose a lot of that.
Like for the traffic, we currently say that you have to provide a summary of the traffic impact, but we don't have currently a TIA that says when you meet these thresholds, you have to install these things. So it's wording that we are working really hard to tighten up, but the wording is not tightened up yet. So yeah, he'll have to meet the requirements of sewer and water, obviously, because those are state permits that he would have to go through. He'd have to meet the state stormwater permit because that's a state stormwater permit. However, he's connecting to a town road, and our town road does not require a TIA at this time. It will in the near future, and he may fall under that. But as of today, I do not have a TIA requirement.
The next step down, just to finish, would be an R5, or an R10, or R15, and then R10, then R5. It's realistically a little harder for you guys to deny a residential if it meets all your needs. And this property is not necessarily good for just residential. I understand there's a conditional rezoning, but then everything has to be determined. It's kind of I wish we could just put one condition on, if that makes sense, but we can't. I just want to make sure that's stated, that one condition would be definitely offered to be rejected. But we definitely want to see this as more of a commercial space where you can walk around. This is where the city park's going to be. This is where you're going to have a bunch of development.
If that was the case, I would say yes all day long.
There's a
And we
lot of
wouldn't even
stuff
have a
going on right
discussion.
here.
Well, let me say that the existing zoning RA, are y'all familiar with the uses that are allowed in the RA now? I mean, it's accessory buildings, accessory apartments, bed and breakfasts, boathouses, community centers, single-family dwellings, group homes, home occupancies, home professional offices, hospitals, nursing homes, nurseries, public buildings, horse stables, schools, veteran offices, wild game farms. So, I mean, I'm just giving you a comparison of the uses.
Correct.
And some of those that he listed are special use permit ones, those are not all by right. Some of them are special use. The community center is by right, but some of them are special use. That was the list of everything.
But really, the biggest thing is you don't want to farm up there. I know these guys don't want to farm up there, We have to move.
You would already have farm up there if somebody wanted to do that.
What?
You would have had a farm years ago if they wanted to farm
No,
that land.
but I'm just saying right now, you could. You could raise cattle, you could have an OHOA, you could have sheds, you could have pigs, you could have chickens, you could have livestock. Currently.
Looking at a straight rezone, we're looking at the uses that surround us today versus the uses that we want to have. So, you know, you're looking at commercial on one side, any type commercial on one side, an existing mobile home park on, and townhomes on the other. So what is the best use of the property?
I mean, I think everybody agrees the best use is some sort of commercial use, just don't wanna see apartments.
That's my biggest fear. At the end of the day, if we leave today, we're gonna be approving 700 possible units.
The roads aren't getting any better.
Say again?
And the roads aren't gonna be any different in proximity because there's no road system.
That's another item that can be addressed.
Can I show them something?
Please.
If it has any kind of site plan, road connection, or anything on it, no. It was a good try, Jesse.
Hypothetically, if there would be a connection between J.H. Bats.
Is there any intent for the RA right down the street that you know of? I mean, they're gonna do, you don't have any idea what they're gonna do?
It'll be requested, a rezoning
There's nothing in the works or?
as well. There has been conversations off and on, but nothing has materialized.
And as of right now, we can't put conditional, correct? That's what was said.
If you approve it, you're approving all the uses within the table of uses. Or you're recommending approval, you're not approving, you're recommending.
Do I have any further discussion on this rezoning request? Do I have a motion? What do you do now? What happens now?
I need either a motion to recommend approval or a motion to recommend denial, or if we need additional conversation.
Recommend for additional conversation.
I meant like right
Oh,
now.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant like come back next session.
I mean, for
Can
that.
we do that?
For that to happen, you would need specific things for me to investigate or to look into. Like, for instance, when we looked at changeable signs, there was questions about the way that the signs operated and things like that, that I researched and came back and said, you'd have to have something for me to investigate and bring back to you.
I mean, if this was a special use permit and you came in with commercial and 20 or 30% residential, I would have no problem at all saying yes. But I understand that. I'm just saying if you came in with a special use permit, I could easily say it, but just a blanket check, something that could possibly turn into 300 units after the board just approved 400 units.
But you have to remember, even in R10, you're still at about 200 units, sorry.
You gotta talk up your brain.
Even with an R10, you're at almost 200 units.
As it sits right now.
As it sits
200
right now. And R10 is gonna be hard for anyone to object, because that's just your residential homes. You're gonna have to allow me to do something with that property. I'm just saying the density is not the issue. It's what is the best function for the town? And the best function for the town is not an R5, it's not an R10, it's an MU. And I know, on you guys, I can't get rid of apartments, and you guys can't accept apartments. We're in this catch-22. But I can't redesign that whole front until I know exactly what should be there. There's a lot of items that could go into that front. It's just, we don't know what they could be right now, so that it's either gonna be residential, or the best use would be commercial, because it's right there by everything else. That's where the whole town park is there, that's the whole livelihood of the off-the-island Surf City.
We're basically looking at possibly 200 residential units and no commercial, or,
We're not sure what we're looking at.
It's never going over
That's what I mean.
200 units.
Right now, you're looking at does
because
mixed
eventually,
use. You're
even
not
Amy
looking,
said it will be rezoned at some point.
you're looking at mixed use and whether or not mixed use fits there.
We need to decide.
And then in a minute, you'll look at whether or not a different use works there. And you could say all of them work there, or you could say none of them work there. But this moment right now, we are looking at does mixed use with the categories that it has fit in this situation based on the land use plan. Now, the land use plan is a plan. If you feel that the plan isn't right there, then that's okay. You can say, we feel like we would like to do approval because we feel like the plan should have included a little bit more here. Or you can say, we agree that the plan got it right here. The plan is the guiding document. It's different than the ordinance, and the ordinance is the rule. You have to do X, Y, and Z. The plan is the recommended way to move forward. If you as the planning board don't feel that the plan got it right at that point, then you have the ability to say that. I don't, because I am staff who is saying what the plan, in my interpretation, says. You as the planning board can make that decision.
Can I ask you, as the town, if apartments were off the table, would you recommend this 1 out of 10?
All day.
If the number of uses were limited, if some of the uses were limited.
Say no gas stations, no apartments.
And no big box. So
No big
yes,
box. Yeah,
if there were some limited, if there were some limited
day.
uses.
All day. But we can't.
However, you
So
have to
don't
look
make it
at all the
residential.
uses.
That's all I'm saying, is don't make it residential.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second for approval. All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Good luck to council. Jeez.
We'll leave it to council's hands
You
to make
withdraw,
that
so
decision.
hear me out before you withdraw. You withdraw the second application, only the
Don't
first
do it, then we're
application
stuck
is
with
going to council.
residential.
And that's what you want.
And you're only
Okay.
a net 40 if they,
We are withdrawing, can you come up here and say it loud and proud?
I'd like to withdraw the Dextasy application for rezoning for R5.
My name is,
Jesse Zimmer.
thank you, Jesse. All right, so we will not be doing item B under number 6. We will be moving to item C.
Should have had this one first.
Right? Great. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the last item under rezoning is a general rezoning request, that is by Becky and Tay Filer. I am going to skip through reading some of this because I just read it all to y'all, and I feel like we really discussed the difference between the rezoning types. So again, general rezoning, Tay and Becky are requesting the approval of a general use zoning map amendment to rezone 2 tracts of land totaling approximately 8.62 acres from office and Institutional to C3 Extended Entranceway Commercial District. The subject properties are in the 600 block of NC 210. The GIS numbers are given for your use, and they're shown on your map. They're basically across from the community college, going out towards 17. So again, general rezoning, we have to look, we can't take into account any kind of site plan, road connections, any of that stuff. The intent of office and institutional district is to establish as a district to serve as a transitional zone between residential and non-residential uses. The regulations of this district permit intensive development provided the necessary public and/or community water and adequate sewer disposals are available. The entranceway commercial district, which is what they're requesting, is to provide for additional commercial uses which are suitable, practical, and appropriate for the mainland area of Surf City's planning and zoning jurisdictions. Its regulations are designated to encourage a continuity of uses along the main thoroughfares onto the island, enhance the landscaping of properties in the district, provide a commercial district with an expanded number of permitted uses, and limit access points on 5210 to preserve the transportation capacity of the highway. So in your packet is allowable uses. C3 is our most, it allows our most intense uses for commercial. It does not allow for residential. It has both permitted and special use permit items. You can see them in your list. The subject property has direct access to NC 210. Again, they will have to meet NCDOT requirements to receive a driveway permit because they are on an NCDOT road, not site specific, so there's no trip generation or anything or roadway improvements to discuss. The site will receive water and sewer from the town of Surf City. Approval of this rezoning request will not place the applicant on the sewer wait list. A site-specific plan will need to be submitted and approved by town council or staff before being placed on that wait list. The environmental layer does show the potential of wetland areas. Not sure I believe it 100%, but they are on there, so the applicant would have to go through Army Corps, DEQ, get that worked out if they moved forward. Surrounding zoning, the property to the north is low-density residential. It's zoned office and institutional, however, it's a single-family home. The property to the east is low-density residential, and it is in the county and zoned residential performance. To the south is low-density residential, again in the county, and residential performance. To the west is low-density residential and institutional, with the county being that residential performance and the town being office and institutional. The Town of Surf City 2022 land use plan, we go to Chapter 5 to figure out whether or not we think this should move forward. So the table below provides the existing and proposed future land use categories. The existing is civic and institutional, which is government uses, educational facilities, public utility infrastructure, and house of worships, with an undesired use of commercial, industrial, or residential. The regional mixed use is what our C3 typically falls under, which is most commercial, retail, office, and institutional, employment centers, multifamily residential, and high-density residential, although those are not allowed in C3. The undesired uses would be medium and low-density single-family and industrial and manufacturing uses with negative external impacts. The civic and institutional category is intended to identify public and quasi-public land that is currently and anticipated to remain in active use. The regional mixed-use category will allow for the strategic allocation of future development and population growth while limiting land use conflicts within existing neighborhoods. Growth is focused in locations that are served by water sewer infrastructure and are located along existing primary roadway corridors. The future land use category provides access to retail, office, and multifamily residential uses. The preferred land use mix is primarily commercial, retail, and office with multifamily residential uses. Large employment centers and retail spaces are encouraged. Residential uses should account for less than 50% of a development proposal and should complement a more substantial mix of commercial and office use. Development within this category should provide ample landscaping and street trees to present an inviting environment to travelers passing through the town. So policies that support it, the town supports the additional compatible commercial development. 5.1, maintain the small town, or policies that do not support it. Maintain the small town family-friendly atmosphere. The land use plan consistency, which we talked about earlier, the town generally requires that an official land use and development related action remain consistent, so the map does not show this as C3 or as the land use category that would encompass C3. And then the town discourages large retail projects, also referred to as big boxes, when not located along the 17 corridor. So this is a little bit further down the road and not down the 17 corridor. We kind of went through earlier what you're supposed to look at when you're looking at this, how it affects the surrounding area, the size, physical condition, the relationship between the current, actual, and permissible development. So staff is submitting the proposed general use rezoning application for the planning board's consideration. This proposal is consistent with one policy and inconsistent with one objective and 3 policies. This plan supports commercial growth, however, more intense development as allowed in C3 zoning is supported along US 17 corridor and not within the NC 210 corridor. As noted within the above policies and objectives, the most intense C3 zoning does not support the small town, small scale development feel. The plan also supports office and institutional zoning as a transition between the more intense commercial uses and residential uses. The rezoning request would allow intense commercial uses to be placed adjacent to the residential properties. The planning board will need to vote to recommend approval or denial. We've provided a statement for both as noted below. So the rezoning request is in your packet. If you have any questions, please let me know. Happy to answer them.
Amy, can Jason and I speak?
This is right across from the community college, right?
Yep. You will need to state your name.
Jason Adams, 2905 South Shore Drive. Tay Filer, we have 2 rental houses on the island, 919 South Shore Drive and 1021 South Shore Drive, and I live in Sloop Point. Jason and I are partners on this project. We put this property under contract, hoping that the current zoning would cover what we want to do. We came and met with Amy, and it will not. So she went through, I guess, the land plan or the different zoning, make sure I say this correct, Amy, that what we want to do can only be covered with C3. So that is why we're asking for C3. I don't know what we're allowed to say and what we're not allowed to say up here after.
No one's living on the property. There's no
No
density.
no livable units?
It's currently vacant property, yes.
0.
Yeah, it's currently vacant property, and it's got a small lake on it that we're wanting to approve on. We're kind of in a pickle because of what came up earlier with sewer capacity, and luckily, the back of this property can be done with septic, so we can, if we miss the window for being able to get any of his capacity, and we have spoken with David about that, but again, it looks like proximity is gonna gobble up all the capacity for the next 3 to 5 years. So we, on this particular piece of property, what we're hoping to do as phase 1 is in the back. Phase 2 would be something more professional up front along the wetland she mentioned. That is, we're learning, it's called non-conditional wetland. Most of that land, we think, was borrow pits, if you're familiar with the term. People just took dirt from that land and used it to build 210. So the Army Corps of Engineers says you can make it back usable. So we just, I don't know what questions you can ask us like what just happened before, but we're in no way in a situation like was here before about density. I just don't think that's an issue.
Or big box.
No big box. We just,
No high rises or anything?
no, and the reason we want an open-ended C3 is because we don't know exactly what's going to go up front along the road on phase 2 down the road. And we just, again, we're under a time crunch. with trying to close on this, and we can't buy it if it's a I&O, because we can't do what we want to do with it. So that's what.
Straight rezone?
Straight rezone.
Second one of your career, Amy?
Second one
on
of
the
my
same
career
day?
tonight.
Same day.
Almost
Been
three.
a night of new
Allowable,
things.
or isn't there a limit for straight rezones? So why not conditional then if you know what you want to do?
We know what we want to do on the back, but we don't know exactly what we want to do on the front. And like she said before, all the contractors that are doing the work, the engineers and stuff, they're so backed up, we can't necessarily get the site plan done prior to being able to close on the property. So it's a chicken and the egg situation that we have to get the Army Corps of Engineers, we have to have civil engineers draw it, and we don't mind doing all that. But again, we have a closing date, so
Risk of development.
that's the risk of development, and we're not a big box developer, we're local boys. So,
And it's also my understanding that you are moving forward with some of those things. This was just kind of a, you're,
Everything's been ordered, that's correct.
everything's been ordered.
you were trying to request the rezoning because of your closing date.
Correct.
If that got denied and your date was extended, you would come back with a conditional
Yes. I mean,
district.
that's,
But
we have contingency plans, but this was the obvious and easiest path forward, and to try to come meet with you, and we knew it was a difficult hill to climb, but it was worth,
I like the fact that there's no residential.
yeah, it's not, and
But
I-
it could be a gas station, Amy?
yes,
It could be a Walmart?
if it would fit,
it wouldn't fit.
if it would
I'm
fit.
saying
This is our most intense. It could be industrial, it could
that was
be,
intended for Highway 17?
in the land use plan, yes. It is shown in the land use plan. Hold on, let me get it pulled back up. That's the
An
wrong
option
one.
to subdivide the property and rezone the back half?
From my standpoint, yes, there is an option to subdivide and break the zoning between them and leave the front office and institutional for now and do like a conditional district or something on the back. It would be very hard, it would be even harder to rezone the back as C3 and leave the front as office and institutional, because then you wouldn't even have a true connection to the roadway.
Whatever they want to do only fits in C3, it sounds like.
But it could fit in conditional C3?
Anything can fit in conditional. And it may be looking at that use that we change some uses again, like we've talked about in the ordinance rewrite. That's one of the things that y'all are gonna get in this next, hopefully tomorrow, if not the first of next week, is our table of uses. And we may want to slide some things around, because they may make sense in some other districts that they don't currently, just like we talked about earlier. The mixed use may not need to be so intensive on some of the higher end things. They may need to go somewhere else.
That's all we had, we just,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Wish it was at least touching C3. Be a lot easier. It's more of a, almost a spot rezone of some nature. It's highly frowned upon typically in planning, is it not?
Yes. And legislation.
Boat storage?
Big no-no, right?
How large is the lake or pond back there?
0.3 acres.
and again, I think it was dug out as somebody needed some dirt for something. And our plan is to slightly change the size of it. I think what we found out is that you can increase the lake size up to an acre without getting a major soil permit. We just want to make it more of a water feature with a
More attractive.
more attractive, improve the property.
And we're within probably a quarter mile of Lowe's and Harris Teeter there, so we're in that zone, across the street from Cape Fear Community College.
I wonder if they might have made that zoning right there. I don't know if it was because of the community college, but also they put the transformer right there. If you remember, just before you get to this property, before you get to Dandelion, there's a big transformer station there, and I saw that in INO.
Yeah.
That's part of INO's,
Transformers in C3.
oh, it is?
There's only one O and I parcel between you and the
Okay.
C3, and it's currently residential. And these were in town when I came, so I have no rhyme or I don't know.
There are houses in between there?
There is one single-family residential between him and the C3. And
That
then
one
you
is
have-
right, is INO, is
It's zoned
designated INO.
INO, or O and I, I'm sorry, it's zoned O and I. So he has a single-family house between him and C3. And then the county-zoned area is single-family homes. And with the exception of the college, most of the stuff across the street appears to be more single-family.
A lot of that development on Alston, right there beside Harris Teeter, backs up to this property if you're looking from an overhead view. And you're probably familiar with that one residential house. It's a brick ranch that sits pretty far back.
Not really opposed to some sort of commercial use. I just wish I could see your site plan, to see if it kind of coordinates with the neighbors. It's kind of the same problem that the previous applicant had. We don't know what you're doing, you know, it's kind of
Understand?
it's like, what is it, you know? And this is an even worse use than the previous applicant. I mean, I shouldn't say worse, but
More intense,
more intensive,
the word you're
sorry.
looking for.
I guess what I would say to that is it's more intensive if it were abused, which, you know, in our situation, that's not gonna happen, but
You
I
can
understand,
sell
like
the
he said.
property and rights convey, correct? He could sell the property tomorrow and rights convey, or after council
We could
approves.
rezone it and for some reason them not sell it to these fine folks.
Yeah.
And the owner renege and be like, oh, you got it rezoned for me, thanks.
Actually, the property value would probably increase at C3, so you might be more incentivized to sell it.
That is all,
So irrelevant.
I wish,
all speculation.
I wish it was something other than C3 that this could go into, but that's, you know, that's
Still, the council has to approve it.
correct.
Correct. You're just making a recommendation.
On their shelf.
We can't recommend it be conditional. That's not a option. They'd have to bring it back just to do that, I guess, with a site plan.
So with the site plan, you would have to show like where your all your designated areas are, and then you would limit those uses. So like, for them, they could show we're gonna dedicate no more than this many square feet to this use back here, and then we're gonna dedicate no more than this many square foot to these limited uses out front. But you have to know the square footages of what you want. So like, with a mixed use one, you would have to know, I want 52 residents and 22,000 square feet of retail or whatever. You have to at least be that far into it. You don't have to have like here's my buildings, here's my roadway network or whatnot. But you have to put limits on the amount of space dedicated to those uses and tell me what those uses are. And then you have to have your environmental done, which it sounds like you already do.
Opposed to making a conditional rezoning?
We don't know specifically what is gonna go up front in those two out parcels yet, because it's phase 2.
Down the road, that's,
And also, we don't know that the seller will extend our closing date if our engineers can't get what you want done to do a conditional, because you require more than what we have done right now. Did I say all that right, Amy?
Yep, you did. And we can sit down and go back through this month, if you want to, on exactly what I need to make sure that we're all on the same page of exactly what's needed.
You said there's the Rambler, that's the O and I in between you and Lowe's and Harris Teeter.
Yes.
So you're just one parcel between C3 and that's already zoned outside of residential anyway, so.
I feel like that property's in the business corridor.
I'm not denying this a business corridor, just like I said, just wish we could see. Wish it was conditional.
And the O&I is a business zoning because it's office and institutional. It's just not as intense as the C3.
I didn't see, maybe I didn't see it, the town recommendation.
I mean, it's,
Recommends it as civic and institutional.
No, usually,
you say that I say that the plan doesn't support it because of the intent, again, because of the intensity of uses. So it's not like an I recommend, it's if you recommend denial, this is why the plan supports it, because it's what the plan supports.
Plan is only just a guideline.
It's the guideline I have to use.
yeah.
Like I said earlier, the council can decide that like that, maybe we missed it on that one little spot or, you know, or whatnot. They have the ability to do that. I do not have the ability to do that.
If we recommend it today, they have the ability to kind of narrow the focus.
They still can't make it conditional, can they? They still have to have a site plan to make it conditional.
So on the site plan, let me go back to that real quick.
The council have the same choice as us, basically. It'll be yes or no.
Yes.
They won't want it conditional, so we can have.
Go to cancel. Still going to cancel.
Yeah, as everything does.
Everything goes from here to council always.
Yeah, no,
The
absolutely.
recommendation.
Final.
Except for fences over 6 feet. They stay here.
Yep.
The only power we really have.
It's fences over 6 feet.
Don't have any further discussion. I'm being looked at from both sides, so. Amy, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Do you have an overview of can you pull it up on our screens as far as the Google map?
Yeah. Chris, can they see my screen, please? You want the Google map, the zoning
Yeah.
map, or?
It's right across from the community.
Just let's see the residential
Yeah, there.
beside it.
It's that red brick one.
Sure can. So this is here, let me change to Pender County GIS so you can see the,
You mind?
so you can see the property lines.
Back by the house is that red one. It's got a carport.
All right, so this 544 is the residential house back towards the other.
No? Or O&I?
So this is the edge of the C3. And then this is INO, or O&I, O&I, O&I. And those are the two parcels. The pond splits the two parcels that they're looking at. So across the road, we have the community college that we talked about. You have the county's residential. There's actually two of these lots are actually in our town. And then you have the residential uses here. The apartments are obviously complete here.
Somewhere in there, doesn't it leave Surf City? Like where on that map, in this curve, is that still Surf City?
It's shotgun. It's everywhere.
I'll show you the boundaries map, which is tons of fun. So 210 is very spotty. So it ends just after your property, the property that we're looking at, and goes back into the county, and then there's spots.
I don't know if this matters to you, but you were talking about density in the town. It seems like that was a bugaboo. But the heaviest density, well, which map's easiest, is like, just like I said, where it ends on that road. I think it's called King, but that's not Surf City anyway. Yeah, it's gonna count. 300 or 400 stuff, I think, I think.
Still has to go to council.
Make a recommendation to approve.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
All right, so moving along to updates. We are through with our regular agenda items. Updates, we have all the fun things we looked at tonight. We have recently had a conversation with a potential restaurant right here beside the entrance to Waterside. And then we have,
I'm not seeing your computer.
oh, okay. At the entrance to Waterside, if you're going into Waterside, that piece to the right, we're looking at that there. And then a oil change place has reached out between the Go Gas and the Watkins Flooring. So those are two new projects that we've not seen anything on, however, have reached out. I think I mentioned the Advanced Auto in front of Harris Teeter last month, but I may not have, so if I didn't, there's a proposed potential Advanced Auto in front of the Harris Teeter. Do what? My understanding is that 22 of the lots in Accolade have sold, so that construction could potentially begin in the near future. The Hines tract that we rezoned, or not rezoned, that we did site plan and subdivision for a few months back, it seems like some of the townhome sections may be getting ready. There's interest in them from some of the builders, so it sounds like those may be getting ready to move forward as well. So those are the main things that we've had pop up. As far as the ordinance rewrite that we've kind of alluded to off and on all night, I am supposed to have the clean copy with all the changes accepted by the end of this week. I will provide that to y'all electronically. I am going to try something different than the file share site, because that does not seem to be going well. Was everybody able to get into the folder that I sent in the email this time, except you, Miss Sally, because your email hates me?
My whole email is crashed.
Okay.
I don't even have one yet.
I'm gonna have to work with you, but everybody else was able to utilize that folder. So I think what I'm gonna do is a similar folder so that y'all can all get into it and see it easier. On the 17th, if you are available, Karen will be zooming into our council work session. Work session starts at 9. I'm not sure where she is on the agenda, but she will be zooming in and presenting to council kind of where we're at, what we've done, and all of that. And then I sent y'all an invitation. A few of you accepted, a few of you ignored me, for the 30th. If you did not get your invitation, and Miss Sally, you probably didn't because your email crashed. The 30th at 10, we will have a joint meeting with town council in which they will provide their comments, and you will provide any additional comments or be here to answer any questions of kind of why we did what we did during our process of it on the 30th. Depending on how that goes, could be an adoption as early as July or August of the new zoning ordinances.
What time on the 17th?
9 is what time council workshop starts. I'm not sure where she is on the agenda. If you cannot be here, remember that it is online. You can go back and watch it if you would like to go back and watch it. Please do try to be here on the 30th at 10. I think y'all are going to be happy with the flow charts and all of that. It's going to make understanding some of the processes easier. There's more pictures to show what we mean by the words, so it's not always Amy interpreting what the words is. There's a clear picture that says this is what it means. I'm really looking forward to that. I need pictures. And beyond that, that is all I really have for tonight.
Do you know what restaurant it is?
I do not. They did not tell me what they were.
You know that's important.
Breakfast restaurants are important. There is a restaurant, we do have a upfit permit for, beside Burrito Shack, for a pho, whatever, however you say that word, bowl thing,
Where'd you say it was?
beside the Burrito Shack.
Well, it's like an Asian thing. It's like a soup type.
It's good. I
I've never
mean,
really had it,
I've had it when I used to work in Wilmington.
It's a new trendy thing.
It,
Looks good.
Is that what they have in Porter's Neck?
That'll be healthy.
I don't know, I eat at the one downtown, because I work downtown. And that's all I really have, unless y'all have any questions for me.
No more. No
June
more.
off?
Oh, August, I may be on vacation, and I may want to switch the meeting around a little bit to accommodate that. So you may receive a question for a different date in August, just a heads up.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion.
Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed.